Okay, so picture this. You are in a meeting. It is the dreaded Tuesday afternoon strategy session.
Oh, I know that exact meeting.
Right, we all do. The project is obviously failing. The numbers are red. The timeline is just completely blown. And everyone, literally everyone, is just sitting there politely nodding.
Just kind of smiling and looking at their notebooks.
Yeah.
The classic don't rock the boat scenario.
Exactly, the polite lie. But then someone suggests forming a subcommittee to explore alternative timelines. You can just feel the air leaving the room. It is suffocating. You know that feeling, right?
Painfully well. Is just kicking the can down the road.
But then there is that one person, the one who shifts in their chair, makes a noise that sounds a little bit like a growl, and then just drops the hammer.
The one who finally speaks up.
Yes, they say something like, "This is nonsense. We are losing money. The plan is garbage, and we need to kill this project right now."
And the whole room just freezes.
The room freezes. Half the people are terrified, and the other half are secretly thinking, "Oh, thank God someone finally said it."
It is a massive relief for the room, even if it is uncomfortable.
So today we are doing a deep dive into that person, the one who refuses to let things rot in silence. We are looking at a specific profile from the Max Energy ME80 personality system.
Which is really a great place to start, actually. Because before we get to the specific profile, we should probably set the stage with the system itself.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Because it is not what people might expect.
Right. The Max Energy ME80 isn't your standard are you an introvert or an extrovert kind of test. It is not a horoscope. It treats personality more like an electrical wiring diagram.
And that is what really drew me to this deep dive. It is about energy flow. Like, how much voltage can you handle, and where does that electricity actually go?
Precisely. It looks at how you process input, how you regulate internal pressure, and how you manifest output. And the specific wiring diagram we are looking at today has, and I am really not exaggerating here, maybe the most intense name I have ever seen in a personality report.
I saw the report title, and I instinctively checked to see if I was wearing a helmet. Today, we are unpacking the ASN, also known as the combative breaker.
The combative breaker. It is quite a title.
And come on, that sounds like a heavy metal album or some kind of demolition vehicle. It sounds really aggressive.
It does sound aggressive. But if we really dig into the source material, we need to nuance that word a bit. It is not aggression just for the sake of hurting people. It is what the report calls confrontational execution.
Confrontational execution.
Yeah, it is the energy of meeting a contradiction head-on instead of avoiding it.
So let's start with that identity, the identity and core declaration part of the report. It describes this person as someone who charges where resistance peaks.
Think of them as a battering ram, but, and this is crucial for you to understand, a battering ram with a moral compass. The core definition here is someone who tears open new paths through the immovable.
Wow, through the immovable.
Right. And their trigger isn't just that they are in a bad mood. It is a physiological intolerance for delay, for superficiality, and for irresponsibility.
Okay, but let me push back a little. Isn't that just a fancy way of saying they have a really short fuse? Because I feel like we've all met people who just like to yell.
That is the common misconception. The control mechanism, basically the philosophy that drives the car, is totally different for an AASN. It is not about anger. It is about duty.
Duty.
Yes, for a combative breaker, seeing a problem and choosing to stay silent isn't just being polite. To them, that is a literal dereliction of duty.
So in their head, if they see a fire and don't scream fire, they are the bad guy.
Exactly. The report uses this incredibly powerful phrase to describe their internal state. It says, "I cannot bear to watch this continue."
I cannot bear to watch this continue.
That is their internal monologue. They would rather speak plainly, even if it makes the room super uncomfortable, even if it ruins the vibe, than allow a problem to rot in darkness.
Rot in darkness. That is so visceral. It suggests they see themselves as the ones bringing the light, even if that light is coming from a flamethrower.
That is a very fair analogy. They prefer a moment of sharp, painful conflict to a lifetime of fake peace.
Okay, so we know why they do it. They feel a duty to break the deadlock. Now let's talk about how they do it. The ME80 system talks about an energy matrix. What is the engine under the hood here?
The structural logic is defined as high-pressure breakthrough. So this isn't a slow burn type of personality. It is sustainable combat type output.
Sustainable? That is surprising to me. I would think that level of intensity would burn out really quickly. You know, like a sprinter versus a marathon runner.
You would think so, but the AASN is built for it. Imagine a hydraulic press. It generates immense pressure, but the machine itself is solid steel. It is designed to handle that heavy load day in and day out.
So it doesn't break under its own force.
Right. When they sense a problem, their emotion transforms almost instantly into action energy. There is no lag time.
All right, let's pop the hood and look at the actual components. The ME80 system breaks us down into 4 layers: IQ, IQ, EQ, and manifestation. Now, I have to stop you here because usually when people say IQ, they mean how good you are at math, and EQ is how nice you are.
Right, emotional intelligence.
Yeah, but in this system, those terms seem to mean something else entirely.
You are absolutely right, and it is important we clarify that for the listeners. In the max energy system, these layers describe the function of the energy, not just traditional intelligence.
Okay, so let's start at the bottom. The foundational layer, or IP. The report calls this the inner value layer. For the combative breaker, this is direction sense activated.
Think of this as an internal gyroscope or a compass. When everything is chaotic, smoke, noise, confusion, the AASN has a locked-on sense of direction. They know exactly where the breakthrough needs to happen.
So while everyone else is running around circles asking, what do we do? The AASN is pointing at a solid wall and saying, we go through there.
Exactly. They don't get lost in the noise. They have a target lock on the solution.
Okay, moving up. The IQ layer. The report calls this the emotional activation layer. Wait, IQ is emotional.
In this system, yes. It refers to what activates your engine, the input processing. For the AASN, this is structure and principle judgment.
Break that down for me.
It means their emotions aren't random. They don't get angry because they are hungry or tired. They get activated when a structure is broken or a principle is violated.
So if someone is just being annoying, they might just ignore it entirely. But if someone breaks a safety protocol or lies about the budget,
Then the engine roars to life.
yeah.
It is a judgment call based on logic and structure. It is not, I am mad because I am grumpy. It is, I am mad because you are violating the basic standard of excellence.
That makes total sense. It is righteous indignation, essentially. Now, the third layer, EQ, or the decision calculation layer, the report describes this as emotional bearing and stability.
This is the shock absorber.
Really?
Yeah.
Because from the outside, the combative breaker looks like they are absolutely losing it. They are loud, they are intense. How is that stable?
And that is the paradox here.
Hmm.
Internally, the mechanism is built to bear massive weight. They have high bearing capacity. They can hold a tremendous amount of pressure and tension without collapsing.
Wow.
They're designed to be the pillar that holds up the roof while everything else shakes.
So the shouting isn't them falling apart. The shouting is them venting the pressure so the whole system doesn't explode.
Precisely. They are the load-bearing wall.
And finally, the top layer, manifestation. What does the world actually see?
Energy released outward. Impact. Action. The AASN is not an introvert who stews in the corner writing angry emails that they never end up sending. They are designed purely for output.
So to recap the machine for everyone listening, we have a compass, the IP, that finds the problem, a trigger, the IQ, based on principles, a shock absorber, the EQ, that handles the pressure, and an exhaust pipe, the manifestation, that blasts that energy outward.
That is the combative breaker in a nutshell.
Let's dig a little deeper into that paradox you mentioned earlier, the difference between the inside and the outside. The deep analysis section of the report talks about clarity and pressure resilience.
Yes, the contrast is really fascinating. Outwardly, the AASN looks intense, maybe even chaotic to some because they are so loud or so incredibly direct. But internally, their thinking is crystal clear.
So while I am freaking out about the tone of their voice, they are calmly calculating the next 3 steps.
Exactly. They excel at finding the heart of the issue when things are chaotic. And here is the most noble part of this profile, which I think gets overlooked a lot. They habitually assume final responsibility.
Buck stops here mentality.
They're the ones who say, if this goes wrong, blame me. But we are doing it. They don't pass the buck. They don't look for a committee to hide behind.
That is highly admirable. I want that person in a crisis. But let's be real for a second. Being around a human battering ram isn't always a picnic. I mean, nobody likes being yelled at, even if the person yelling is technically right.
Right. Nobody enjoys that.
So we have to talk about the shadow blind spots. What is the cost of being a combative breaker?
The report defines the shadow with 2 simple words: sharpness and cost.
Ominous.
It comes down to physics, really, because their action and emotion activate at the exact same time. Remember, high speed, no lag, there's no padding.
No padding. So no compliment sandwich. No, I really value you as a person, but...
None. They go straight to the point. And because of that, their direct expression leaves scars. They often overlook the fact that other people have feelings or that other people process information a lot slower than they do.
Right. They treat people like components in the machine. If the component is malfunctioning, you hit it with a wrench. But people aren't gears. If you hit me with a wrench, I am going to call HR.
Exactly. And they have incredibly high standards for themselves, which is fine, but they project those standards onto everyone else. If they can work 18 hours straight to fix a problem, they don't understand why you want to go home at 5 p.m. to see your kids. They view that as weakness.
And the report mentions something about cooling down too, right?
Yes. It says when anger compounds, it is difficult to fully calm quickly because that engine is so heavy, once it gets spinning, it takes a long time to spin down. They might stay in combat mode long after the actual battle is over.
Which leads us perfectly into social relationships. Step 11 in our breakdown. The dynamic here is described as reassurance and tension.
It is a total double-edged sword. In a group setting, the AASN is often the charge leader. They completely command the room.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine a dinner party. The food arrives, and it is ice cold. The AASN is the one who snaps their fingers for the waiter, right?
Yes. And everyone at the table feels two things at once. First, relief. Oh, thank God, I didn't want to eat this cold soup. But second, absolute terror. Oh, no. I hope they don't make a scene and yell at the poor waiter.
That is the perfect description. Reassurance and tension. You feel safe because someone is finally dealing with the problem, but you feel stressed because the intensity is just so high.
The report notes that being friends with an AASN means you never have to guess what they're thinking. They are basically incapable of being passive-aggressive. They're just aggressive-aggressive.
Honest aggressive.
But the downside is the fear of public critique. If you're in their inner circle and you mess up, they will tell you. And they might tell you in front of everyone, because to them, the truth with a capital T is way more important than your feelings in that specific moment.
So high risk, high reward in friendship. Now let's pivot to where this personality really shines, because let's be honest, you probably don't want an AASN planning your relaxing spa weekend. But you definitely want them in business. What is the actual value proposition here?
Their corporate superpower is swiftly exposing overlooked or hidden problems.
So they are the whistleblowers.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Or just a person who points out that the emperor has no clothes. In a business context, companies often drift into inefficiency. Bureaucracy builds up like plaque in arteries. The AASN comes in and just slashes through that politics.
The report calls it stanching the bleeding.
That is the crisis mode. If a project is failing, you don't want a diplomat who's going to hold everyone's hand. You want a breaker. They lay bare the facts. They force choices. They absolutely do not let controversy drag on.
They sound like the ultimate fixer.
They defend professional standards. If the quality is slipping, the AASN is the guard dog barking at the gate. They are the ones who say, this isn't good enough to ship. Do it again.
Given that skill set, the Max Energy report actually lists some specific recommended careers. And I have to say, looking at this list, it makes total sense. These aren't jobs for the faint of heart.
No, these are fields where combat and breakthroughs are virtues, not vices.
First one is rights protection and litigation.
Lawyers. Specifically litigators.
Mm-hmm.
You want an AAS as your defense attorney. You want someone who views the courtroom as a battlefield and is determined to tear through the opposition's argument just to protect your rights.
Second one is high-pressure negotiation.
Think of hostage negotiation or billion-dollar mergers where both sides are deadlocked.
Yeah.
The AASN can break gridlock. They can sit in that extreme tension and force a resolution.
Third is discipline and audit.
The people who come in to find the fraud. The internal affairs investigators, they have to name flaws and rigorously investigate accountability without flinching, even if everyone hates them for it.
And finally, conflict management and crisis response.
The people you call when the building is literally or metaphorically on fire. Their job is to rapidly sever disorder. I really love that phrasing. Sever disorder. Cut it off so the system can survive.
It really paints a picture of a necessary function in society. You know, we often tell people to be nice or just calm down, but this deep dive suggests that we actually need these breakers. If everyone were nice and calm, problems would just accumulate until the whole system collapsed.
That is the absolute key takeaway. Society needs friction to clean itself.
Yeah.
Without the breakers, corruption and inefficiency just grow forever unchecked.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the AASN Combative Breaker, is there a final thought, a golden sentence from the report to leave our listeners with?
There is, and it is actually quite poetic for such a rough personality. The report concludes with this thought. When injustice is corrected, transforming sharpness into an opening blade rather than continuously burning fire, their intensity becomes the force that truly stabilizes systems long term.
An opening blade rather than a burning fire. That is the maturity arc, isn't it?
It is. A burning fire destroys everything indiscriminately, the good and the bad. But an opening blade, like a surgeon's scalpel, cuts only what needs to be cut to heal the patient. When the combative breaker learns to aim that energy to use a scalpel instead of a flamethrower, they aren't just troublemakers anymore. They are the stabilizers. They are the ones who keep the world honest.
I really love that image. So if you are an ASN listening to this, we know you are tired. We know it is exhausting to be the only one who sees the cracks in the wall, but keep swinging that hammer. Just maybe wear safety goggles and warn people before the debris flies.
And maybe just once in a while, count to 10 before you speak.
Maybe count to 5. Let's be realistic.
Fair enough. 5 is good.
And if you work with an ASN, don't tell them to calm down. That never works. Instead, ask them, what do you see that I'm missing?
That is the single best way to turn their aggression into an asset.
Now, this analysis is really just scratching the surface. It comes from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is a deep, complex system that really helps you understand the wiring of the people around you.
Absolutely. If you found this relatable, or maybe you just realized why your boss acts the way they do, you should definitely check out the full details. You can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
Or you can search for Max Energy or Meta Energy on Facebook. There is a whole community there discussing these energy wirings.
It is definitely worth a look. The more we understand our own wiring, the less we short-circuit.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
A pleasure as always.
We will see you next time.